spatial pulse length is the number of cycles multiplied by the wavelength. Remember I said the wavelength is 2 millimeters. 2 millimeters. So guys, don't forget on this worksheet I have for you guys, don't forget to include the units on your answers, okay? Don't forget to include the units, because a number without units is kind of vague. It's what's the word they're using in the book? It is unitless. It has a word they use in the book. It's ambiguous. That was the word. It's ambiguous, right? So we have to include your units when we're describing our these different parameters. Okay. All right. So let me put our spatial pulse length. SPL. Somebody read it to me. SPL equals number of cycles times the wavelength. All right. I do have a question on your worksheet asking you for the spatial pulse length. Okay. Can somebody tell me the formula to determine how do we get the wavelength? Do anybody remember? What's the formula?
Divided by the
Frequency.
By the frequency. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's how you determine the wavelength. Is you take 1.54 millimeters divided by the transducer frequency. Okay, remember. So we have, if a transducer is a 1 megahertz transducer, remember it's going to go 1.54 millimeters. Okay. Also, guys, remember the different ways to determine, the different ways to describe the speed of sound. You know, remember it's 3 ways, right? Or it's actually way more than that, but we're focusing on 3 until we get to number 4 in chapter 7. Okay, 1540 meters per second, 1.54 millimeters per microsecond, and what was the other one? 1.54 kilometers per second. Okay, know all those ways. Just like I can say 154,000 centimeters per second. It's the same thing. All I'm doing, guys, is converting, moving my decimal place over according to whatever unit I'm using. All right. So, spatial pulse length, guys, just like pulse duration. That's why I put these together, because I know the book kind of has spatial pulse length later, right? Or they come right after pulse duration. Right, because it goes in the PRP. So, spatial pulse length also directly proportional to the number of cycles. The number of cycles decrease, the spatial pulse length is also going to decrease. All right? Directly proportional to the wavelength, of course. All right? And we already know that wavelength is inversely proportional to frequency right from last chapter. So spatial pulse length is also inversely proportional to the frequency. Just think, if we have a high frequency transducer, those cycles are coming more often, right? Those cycles are occurring more often. That's going to create a smaller distance between those cycles, okay? It's going to create a smaller distance between those cycles, okay? Or in this case, with pulses, a shorter distance between those pulses. All right? You good here? Good. Guys, any questions on spatial pulse length? Okay, so let's talk about the difference between spatial pulse length and pulse duration. You guys probably already know it, right? Spatial pulse length, we're talking about distance, right? The distance from the beginning of the pulse to the end of the pulse, right? The distance from our on time, right? Okay, when we're talking about pulse duration, we're talking about the duration or time of that pulse, from the beginning of that pulse to the end of that pulse. Okay, guys, you see how I feel like this chapter, it should be a lot easier because you kind of already know these relationships from last chapter. I feel like you can kind of grasp it a little easier. Just a little bit, because you will kind of already know how these things are related. All right? Remember, pulse duration, units are going to be microseconds. Spatial pulse length, our units are millimeters. Okay? 2 characteristics create long pulses. Remember, a lot of mini cycles in the pulse and individual cycles with longer wavelengths. All right? Those are going to create long pulses. 2 characteristics that create short pulses are just the opposite. Fewer cycles in the pulse, and individual cycles with shorter wavelengths. Alright? So again, just like we like short duration pulses, we also like short length pulses as well, because for the same reason, they create images of greater accuracy and provide better axial resolution. I'm getting kind of ahead when I'm talking to you guys about axial resolution. We're going to come to that. I'm just kind of letting you know right now what's the reason for that. I didn't want to just be vague and just say it just creates greater image accuracy. I'm telling you why, because it has better axial resolution. Okay. Axial resolution is probably the most important resolution pertaining to ultrasound, because it determines how deep we can see structure, the depth that we can see. Okay. We're good on spatial pulse length and pulse duration? Yeah. Long? Sweet. All right, guys. Let's talk about the pulse repetition period, not to be confused with the period. Okay? The pulse repetition period is the time from the start of one pulse to the start of the next pulse. Okay? Our pulse repetition period is basically going to consist of one on time, one off time. Okay? So if I'm up here on the board right here, this right here, from the beginning of this pulse to the beginning of the next pulse, all of this, that's our pulse repetition period right there, okay? From right here to right there, that's our PRP. You probably hear me initial that PRP from here on out. Don't want to get tongue twisted with the pulse repetition period all day. Okay? Again, pulse repetition period is the time from the start of one pulse to the start of the next pulse, right? Okay? Its units are going to be in milliseconds, or ms, milliseconds. All right? The typical values in diagnostic imaging for PRP is 100 microseconds to 1 millisecond. PRP is generally 100 to 1,000 times longer than the pulse duration. Right, that makes plenty of sense, right? Because our pulses are always really short. So just think about this. The pulses we can't change those, remember? We can't change the pulse. But the pulse duration, the PRP, think about the distance that the sound has to travel and come back. That's what we're listening for. Remember, we're listening for the reflected sound waves to come back to the transducer. So we know that our body is however deep, most of us are probably like 15 to 20 centimeters deep, right? So it has to account for those different depths. That's why that listening time changes, right? So when we're talking about PRP, we're talking about, again, one on time, one off time, one talking time, one listening time, one transmit, one receive. Okay?
What about the medium?
The medium?
Yes.
What about it?
It will affect or not affect the pulse repetition.
I'm coming to it.
Then you said that the post repetition period is the listening time is included.
I'm sorry.
The listening time is included.
Absolutely.
So all of it is
From the beginning of the pulse
which is post
to the beginning of the next
duration.
pulse. That's included. One talking time, one listening time.
So that's all included.
Pulse repetition period, including the time it takes from the beginning of the pulse to the beginning of the next pulse. So, let's say, for instance, on this one, our PRP on this much higher frequency will be right there. That's still our PRP. Right there. That's our PRP because it includes one on time and one off time. From the beginning of this pulse to the beginning of the next pulse. PRP, just like it is right here. Beginning of this pulse to the beginning of the next pulse. Just like period. Period is what? The beginning of one cycle to the beginning of the next cycle. Okay? So
That's gonna be confusing.
that's tough.
Anyway, it says
That's tough.
period here too, right? So yeah,
The key
repetition.
word would be pulse repetition. That's how you're gonna remember that.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with pulses. We're dealing with pulses, and period is just dealing with cycles. Okay, so last chapter 3 describing sound waves, we're dealing with more cycles. The cycles are the building blocks to pulses, right? I can't have pulses without having more than one cycle, or in diagnostic ultrasound having 2 to 4 cycles. Okay, so period is like one of the building blocks.
So it's called repetition because it's starting another one and
Mhm.
on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so post-repetition period is also determined by the sound source. Determined by the sound source. Because of course, that's how the manufacturers make it. But it's also, guys, also, we control that as well. We control that as well. When we adjust our depth, we're changing the post-repetition period, right? We're changing the post-repetition period. So, I'm gonna put adjustable, yes, big yes. Big yes. The thing about when we're adjusting it, say for instance, when we go deeper, we're not, remember I said, the post-repetition period includes one on time, one listening time. On time is also known as what, guys?
Talking
Talking time, but more specifically to our parameters. Also known as our post duration, right? Our on time is also known as our post duration, right? We already determined that we can't change that. That's already fixed, right? The transducer fixed the post duration. So when we adjust our depth, the only thing we're changing is the listening time. Only thing we're changing is the listening time. So that's why I have shallow and deep right here, because as we go deeper, the machine is gonna need a longer listening time to wait on those reflected sound waves. So when I'm doing a thyroid that's really superficial, that's shallow imaging. My post-repetition period is gonna be a lot shorter because I'm so superficial in the body, right? My listening time is gonna be shorter. But if I'm doing an abdomen, for example, and I need to go all the way down and look at those kidneys that are 14 centimeters deep, I'm gonna have to listen longer, right? Because my sound is gonna have to travel all the way to the kidneys and then bounce back. Reflected sound waves are gonna bounce back to the transducer. So when we're, as a sonographer, we're adjusting our depth, we're changing the PRP. We're changing our post-repetition period every time we adjust the depth. All right? Everybody gets that? I don't want to move on unless everybody kind of understands how we're adjusting depth, how it affects the post-repetition period. We're good?
Because when you change the frequency, that means you got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Because when you change the frequency, it will go there.
Not the frequency, the depth. The depth. The depth. When we change our depth,
No idea.
we're changing the post-repetition period. All right? So if I increase my depth, then my post-repetition period is going to get longer. All right? So what can we say about that relationship? What do you think about that relationship?
Inversely.
They're directly related, because as I go deeper, meaning I'm going,
Oh, yeah.
the numbers
Longer.
getting bigger,
Okay.
my post-repetition period is also going to get longer, right? So I got a little chart right here I'm going to make, right here. I'm just going to go depth up on this one, all right? If I increase the depth, right there, these two PRP and depth, they're directly related. My PRP is going to get longer if I increase the depth, all right? So I'm going to write another up arrow right here.